Hey, everybody, welcome back. And if it's your first time here, just plain welcome. It's 2A Tuesday, and we are a little more than 60 days into President Donald Trump's second go around in the Oval Office. This time he ran as a pro gun president explicitly. And while he hadn't hit that 100-day mark yet, I figured, hey, let's take a look, see what he's been up to, and hey, is he living up to the hype? Well, there's a lot going on there, and we should probably look at the good and the bad. It starts with an executive order to Attorney General Pam Bondi. And let's understand that nominating Bondi was not the most pro-gun move he could have made. Bondi, as Florida Attorney General, vehemently defended the state's gun control laws passed in the wake of Parkland. We had no reason to believe that she was going to be the most pro-gun attorney general you could have in that role. I wouldn't classify her as a gun grabber per se, but she was definitely not my first choice for such a role. But just the same, Trump issued an executive order directing her and her office to start looking at all the gun control laws and regulations on the books and identifying which of these are unconstitutional. In theory, one would probably use the Bruin test to determine that, which means some regulations would be permitted to remain, others not so much. Next, he nominated, didn't really nominate him, he just appointed Kash Patel as acting ATF director. Patel was already running the FBI. He had a long history speaking out on Second Amendment issues. He was a speaker at Gun Owners of America's conference Goals last year. Brandon Herrera spoke very highly of his pro-gun rhetoric, his pro-gun credentials. So that was a positive sign. I was actually at the Second Amendment Freedom Festival when the news dropped. Had a lot of great conversations. A lot of people were very pleased with that. I wanted Herrera, I thought the memes would be awesome if nothing else. And I trusted that Brandon would tear down the ATF. Patel, I could live with. And among many things that Trump did was he ended this whole idea of there being a gun violence public health emergency. This is some rhetoric that was dropped during the Biden administration, and it was kind of alarming because so many of us remember the incredible lengths people went to in the name of public health during COVID. Now, we didn't get quite to that point under Biden, but yeah, who didn't see that could possibly happen, especially in a second term when he's not running for re-election? That was kind of alarming. Ending that was a nice signal, but it was also kind of just a stroke of the pen. It wasn't a big deal to do. That was followed by Attorney General Pam Bondi revoking authority to restore gun rights from the ATF. In theory, this would sound like a bad thing because it means the ATF, can't restore gun rights. But the problem is, since about 1994, the ATF has been completely defunded in that function. Right? Chuck Schumer put a single line in a budget, defunding it. It's been in every budget since then. The ATF had the authority. They had no funding to actually restore anybody's rights, meaning that nobody, no matter how well they had lived their life, be they a nonviolent felon, somebody with a misdemeanor or domestic abuse case, someone who maybe had a history and has cleaned up their life since then. Nobody could get their gun rights back through this process. And that's a real problem because you're not supposed to lose your rights for life, just carte blanche. There should be a process to restore them. People can get their voting rights back. They can get all of their rights back except for the gun rights. Bondi made a move that should fix that. It's a little early to see if it's actually going to do anything, but this is where you start. Again, we're only a couple months into the Trump administration, part 2. What are you going to do? Now, one thing that started off as a setback was the Department of Justice there's been a battle going on about suppressors. Department of Justice previously had argued suppressors are not arms, therefore aren't covered under the Second Amendment. That case went to the next level. Department of Justice attorneys rehashed the same argument. They're not arms. They're therefore not covered under the Second Amendment. Therefore, we can restrict them without worrying about things like the Bruin decision, etc. This was alarming for a lot of us because we expected better out of the Trump administration, right? I mean, he's going to be pro-gun, and he's taking this insane argument. It should be remembered that suppressors are considered, safety devices in other countries. It's considered impolite to shoot on your own land without a suppressor in many cases. So why are we running into this now? But then, here in the last week, the Department of Justice, they made a filing in that case where they're like, hey, can we get a 30-day delay? The Department of Justice wants to rethink our litigation position. In other words, the plan is apparently to back off of that argument. That's good news. Not great news yet, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but still, it's a positive sign because it was an insane argument. It was a very troubling argument because if you start saying, well, that's not arms, then any accessory could theoretically fall into that same trap. The next thing that happened was a gentleman by the name of Robert Leiter, and I may be mispronouncing his name, but he's a Second Amendment scholar, very, very pro-gun. He's a lot like me in that his take on the Second Amendment is that it's not about self-defense against criminals, but self-defense against tyranny and foreign invasion. Totally respect that position. Like I say, it's pretty much the one I have. And Leiter's written extensively on it. He's written several things about it. And now he is the general counsel of the ATF, which means every regulation being proposed is going to go through his office. And that means somebody who is vehemently pro-gun, who understands the Second Amendment is the right to keep and bear arms, and not just arms that are handy for dealing with an armed robbery or to take hunting. He understands it, and he's going to be directing that. He is going to be the guy giving the yay or nay on regulations. That's promising. That's a very promising move. And I'm glad to see Bondi actually, or whoever made that decision, I'm glad they did it. Now, kind of revisiting the suppressor thing, the idea of they were trying to revisit, they wanted to rethink their position on that litigation. That was good, but then it turned out they're doing that on a bunch of cases. Like a whole pile of them. Now, suddenly, they're wanting to rethink all of these. And we don't know exactly which cases. This came through a DOJ spokesperson on X, but it was a big decision. That's all great news, though, but things aren't as great as they could have been. For example, Bondi, on that executive order I mentioned, her job was to do this within 30 days. She was supposed to identify this within 30 days. 30 days came and seemingly went without anything. Then we find out she got an extension, right? That was supposed to expire March 16th. We have heard nothing about this. There's been no further extensions. There's been no, bold step forwards. There's no reports released, nothing. Now, it's entirely possible there is a report sitting on President Trump's desk. Okay, she may have finished the report. It's sitting there, and he just hasn't had a chance to go through it. The White House counsel office may be going through it. Other people may be talking about it. It just may not have been released. I will grant that. But so far, the fact that we haven't even heard about it is not a promising sign. And then we've got some kind of mixed signals that have been going on. Recently, it was announced that 1,000 ATF agents were being reassigned to the FBI. Now, this signaled that they were going to abolish, potentially, the ATF and fold their duties into the FBI. And this is something a lot of us thought when they announced that Patel would be running the ATF as well. This was a logical place to go with that. If he's already their boss, it just becomes a lot easier to fold everything in. But the problem is, when this report of the 1,000 ATF agents were being reassigned to the FBI dropped, the ATF went, no. Just 150 agents are being reassigned temporarily to various field offices, so agents will be free to help with the surge on the southern border. So we had two different stories that weren't really meshing. One that was reportedly from Kash Patel to multiple sources, and then we had the ATF official version. Now, Jared over at Guns and Gadgets, he's got a copy of the email. He dropped a video earlier today. I'm going to have a link to it down in the description below because it's really kind of echoing the official line. And this is what they're sending to or to ATF agents directly. This is the internal email to everybody in the ATF. Something Jared notes, though, is that his source basically said they don't ever really know what's going on until after it's done. In other words, this might be the official line, but it doesn't actually reflect reality. The email claims that the assistant director has been in talks with FBI leadership and confirmed this to be true, but it's also the ATF. We know for a fact they lie about shit, like all the frickin' time. Right? There's a guy named Patrick Tate Ademiak who you should probably look up if you want to know just how bad they will lie about shit. But the problem is right now we're getting these mixed signals. We're not getting an official word one way or another, and that leads us, has us wondering just what the hell is going on. And now I want to talk a little bit more about that, the whole revisiting litigation positions. First, this isn't across the board. That kind of makes some sense because some cases that they may be litigating are really straightforward. For example, career violent felon suing to get his gun rights back. Probably not going to change your position that dangerous felons shouldn't have guns, right? This is one that's a lot of people, within the gun community have an issue with. For the most part, though, it's pretty non-controversial. Violent felon, especially for a career, you don't get your gun rights back. That's just how it's going to be. Even if I think if they're that dangerous, they should remain locked up. Also, they're talking about potentially rethinking this litigation, right? Their position on these lawsuits. It doesn't mean that actually anything's going to change. They're considering it. They want to reconsider it. They could still hold all of this exactly as it is, push for the same gun control in the long run, and honestly, there's not a lot we could do about it at this point. As Jared said in his video, particularly about the ATF, but it actually kind of applies in all of this, is they could be throwing us enough of a bone right now on guns to kind of, keep us happy without, and not alienate us, but then turn around and keep it kind of low key for the midterm elections. Democrats are doing everything they can to shoot themselves in the foot, or in this case, Molotov cocktail themselves in the foot. And it's just entirely possible they're like, we don't want to give them ammunition, and sometimes pro-gun moves can do that. I sincerely hope that's just paranoia, but I can't rule it out. I think Jared may have a good point there, and it's definitely something we should be considering. You definitely want to check out Jared's video. He talks a lot more about both the email and his thoughts on this. Again, that's going to be down in the description. With all of that said, the first couple of months of the Trump administration has generally been really good for guns. It is we're getting an idea what a pro-gun White House, what a pro-Second Amendment White House can do for gun rights in the United States. This is fantastic. It's something that we've desperately needed for a very long time. And no Republican administration in my lifetime has done that, right? I don't think there's been a Republican administration, period, since the National Firearms Act in 1934 that has shown any inkling of being this degree of pro-gun. If they follow through. That's the key. They have to follow through where they're heading now, right? We need that executive order report. We need these litigation positions reconsidered. And we need them reconsidered in such a way where the Department of Justice takes the stance of, yeah, they've been getting it wrong all these years. These laws are, in fact, unconstitutional. You do that, and it's going to be really hard for, judges to sit there and go, well, yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and say the law is constitutional anyways. But it just becomes a lot harder to justify it. And at some point, you're going to find somebody who's just not interested in playing that game. So we need that to happen. We need clarification on these 1,000 ATF agents. Because if they're being reassigned to the FBI, let's make it happen. I mean, there's only 2,600 ATF agents. 1,000 is a huge chunk of them. Let's go ahead, get them reassigned, start the process of folding the ATF into the FBI. It won't solve all of our problems just because it happens, but it is a positive step still, right? And the truth is, if the FBI is in charge of enforcing gun laws, they're not going to trip over themselves trying to justify their existence by doing some really shady stuff on guns. Just my take. But I want to know what your take is, because this is interesting. We've gotten good, we've got bad. For a lot of people, it's not nearly enough. For other people, hey, it's a promising sign. Other people are like, man, if we don't get anything else, we still come out ahead. I want to know where you stand on it. While you're there, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and that notification bell. That way, YouTube will tell you every time I drop a new video. Also, while you're down there, check out the links. There's my Substack, the Liberty Shop affiliate store where you can, get all kinds of Liberty-themed items, household goods, apparel, etc., etc. Check that out. You get a little bit of a discount. Not only do you save a little bit, but I get a couple of bucks to support the channel. And on that note, I'm going to wrap it up, and I will see you all in the next video.